Good morning, Bree. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Yep. It's
Good.
pretty early still. Well, I'm a morning person, but yeah, it's only 7:30 my time, so but I'm
Well,
doing good.
good. Good, good. So I was reading through a bunch of information about you, and did you grow up in California?
I did. I'm born and raised.
Okay, I thought so. And I was looking at, actually stalked your social media.
Good.
I just love the pictures there. I love what you've shared. And even the things, your family and just really makes you personable. And then all of your art things I saw, I just love. I went and looked at all your art classes. And of course, with a grandma and lots of little grandkids, I just love that concept. I love that you have those for the kids. That's great.
You know what? I know it was amazing, and it's not currently, I'm not hosting that type of kid party ever since COVID. I had to pivot kind of significantly in terms of parties, obviously. And so there's a time I would like to get back to that, but so far I've had to pivot, and now I just didn't pivot back. But I love
Well,
it. Yeah.
yeah, and businesses grow and change, and that's a good thing. But it's neat to see foundationally where you've come from,
Thank you.
and to see the things that you've done. And even just looking through your artwork, I just loved all of it. So why
Thank you.
don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, so there's two ways I can tell you about myself. I have a slideshow that will show you pictures about myself for those of you who have not stalked my social media. So I can either start that way, or I can trying to think of what I could tell you that's not in my slideshow.
Yeah, tell us a couple things that aren't in your slideshow that are maybe on a more personal level than business.
Okay. Here's something that's not on my slideshow. One of my joys is that I work with a reptile rescue, and I take all of their frogs and their tiny amphibians. So I have in my office, I have a collection of, I don't know, probably 17 different species of frog and tiny lizard, all in bioactive enclosures that I've built myself. I spend hours on it, and yeah, that's something you don't know about myself on a personal level.
And I
Um,
really love that. So my niece collects frog everything, not real frogs, but frog everything. But I knew that because I know you in our pod group, but I love your frogs. And I imagine that they are like your happy place when you're at your shop, right?
Seriously, yes. So I'll walk in. So the way my studio is set up is I have a front office, and then you walk into the main studio where all the painting and everything takes place. So the office now, because of all the lighting for all the plants, and then I've got a fountain. So you walk in and it's just the fountain's running and the lights are on, and the fog is on for some of the enclosures. And so yeah, it's really, I like to set the stage when I come into my studio that there's the outside world and then the inside world. And so yeah, it's a nice buffer zone. It's my nice entree into my studio.
Very good. Yes, I love that, Bree. Well, why don't you go ahead and get started?
Okay. Let's see. Let me see. So I can share my screen.
Yes.
Ah, this is all so new. Wait, where'd you go? Okay, so where's my little portion of my screen thing? Well, that's weird. Oh, wait,
I am
here we go.
right here.
No, I'm doing, you know what? I have,
There you go. Now it
yeah.
just needs sized correctly.
Yep, that's what I'm
There
trying.
you go. Perfect.
Right? I'm like, I've practiced it enough. Here we go. Because I don't want you to miss anything.
It looks so good.
Move my little, so I can see your face while we're talking. Okay, so does that look good? Can you see that?
It does. Yeah, it looks really good.
Okay, so I'm calling it, and well, you'll understand why I'm calling it this, but I do want to say at the very beginning, Colleen, thank you for this opportunity, because this forced me to, and I mean that in the best possible way, that it forced me to really get clear about some of the concepts that started in heartfelt play with those children. And then I also, I don't know if I have it on my website anymore, but I did a lot of I do, you know what I do? I worked with adults as well, like not just with parties, but with team building events and with summits for high school students. And I have to say that's been some of the most meaningful work in my life. And so I want to thank you for, taking me down memory lane and kind of allowing me to create this lineage of where I've been and where I'm going. So for those of you, my name is Bree. I go by Bree McLean. It's short for Gabrielle. And I have been a painter or a professional artist since I was 22 years old. And I started out painting murals for a guy after he hired me for a job I didn't know existed. His name was Roger, and he was amazing. I was at college. I was in college at the time. I was studying something completely different, not art at all. And a friend of mine saw these little drawings. I would do these little doodles of characters. And he said he thought I could make some extra money while I was in school painting those little characters on the walls in kids' rooms, which that never occurred to me, but I thought it was a great idea. So he put me in touch with Roger. He knew him, and Roger agreed to meet with me. And we talked. I remember we talked for probably over an hour. I was not looking for a job, and he gave me lots of advice. And I left there feeling inspired. Like, in fact, I might be able to make a little extra money. And then 3 days later, he called me out of the blue, and he offered me a job. And I was really, really surprised. And part of the reason I was surprised was because I had prepared for that meeting by recreating on illustration board 3 of my characters. And I had colored them in with brushes and paint that I had bought along with the illustration board. So other than that, I didn't own paint or brushes. I didn't know how to paint. And I told him that. And I thought for sure he's going to say, then never mind. I didn't know. Sorry, I thought you'd had more experience. But instead he said, I mean, really, I was like, oh, I made a mistake. And instead he said something that I'll never forget. And I've thought about it over the years. And it's that if you can draw, you can paint. And, I thought he was crazy. But I have to say, over the years, I realized he's right. And a few years after he hired me, I ended up going out on my own, my own mural business. And I've since gone on to work for people like Eddie Murphy and Paul Reiser, Pottery Barn Kids. That's a reoccurring client.
I love Pottery Barn Kids.
Right. So let me just say that Easter collection, those plates right there, that was so fun. I usually do murals for them, but the plates were kind of like a highlight. This is a breakfast room for a large home in Southern California. These are 2 rooms. These are both, one of them's a dining room, the other one's a bathroom, a powder room. I specialized in kids' rooms with Roger. That's what he specialized in. So this is one wall of one room that most of my murals wrap around. They include the sky or the ceiling, depending on what we're doing. Here's another mural that I did, and this one is actually painted entirely on canvas. And then it got upholstered on the wall. So you touch the walls and they're padded for this nursery. So that all the murals, like I used to work out of my garage. And then about 15 years ago, I got a studio here in Southern California. And then I was able to start painting more canvas type work. So this is some small stuff that I did that turned into prints. This is some other work. I do commissioned paintings. That's mainly what I do. And
I love those flowers.
Thank you. So that is my own work. And the one on the right, the flowers in the middle, they're about 6 feet tall. And the painting on the right is about 8 inches tall. And the painting on the left is a commission for a client who wanted me to do portraits of her children's horses.
Nice.
And this is the beach by where I live. And this is about 6 feet by 4 feet. I'm telling you that because sometimes it's very hard, impossible actually, to get a sense of the scale. And I tend to work very, very large. This is small compared to a lot of the work that I do. So after showing you all this, you might be surprised to learn that I never wanted to be an artist. And I want to tell you why. So when I was a little kid, I would sit in my room and I would draw for hours. From the time I was about 6 to the time I was about 10, it was almost exclusively horses. I was obsessed. Then at around 11 or so, and I'm not sure why this happened, but I got really into Garfield. And so I would take little pieces of paper and I would meticulously recreate Garfield and all of his friends. And then I would color him in and stick him on my wall. So I had all the, it was funny. So that,
Garfield was really popular then.
oh, he was so popular. And he
Like I
actually,
loved Garfield. And then we did Calvin and Hobbes was after that, I think.
oh, Calvin and Hobbes is my favorite cartoon of all time. I still read Calvin and Hobbes. And it's interesting because I do feel like Garfield in some ways was a precursor to Calvin and Hobbes.
Yes.
And
I felt
those
that.
drawings that I showed Roger, they all had the bulbous eyes. That my caricatures were all very, very derivative of Garfield. And so in high school, I kind of, I went through my Garfield phase and then I got into that band, Duran Duran. They were like, all the rage. And so,
Yes.
oh my God.
I'm
I,
wondering why I didn't have you painting them on my ceiling.
I
I
had,
love Duran Duran.
right? Oh my gosh. I had posters. Okay. So now that you say that, you know who the band is. I
Oh,
had
of course I
posters
do.
all over the walls, like all these posters. And then in between, like there was not a centimeter of wall space. I had all the Garfield in between all the posters of Duran Duran. So
Oh,
I would sit there for hours like in the afternoons after school. And I remember just drawing each one of their faces from some probably Teen Beat magazine, right?
right.
Um, so I would just draw for hours and hours. And so by high school, I mean, to be honest, after all that time, I mean, I got pretty good at drawing realistically. And so it's not surprising that people would say I was an artist. And they would either say it directly or they would say something like, you're so lucky or you're so talented. And it was always with an air of like wishful thinking. I wish I was an artist. And I still get this quite a bit. Actually, I get all of these quite a bit, but I can't even draw a straight line. And I was really like, as a teenager, I loved the attention and I loved being, I loved the attention and I could tell it was a compliment, but I was also super confused by the comments. Like I didn't understand why they saw me any different than they saw themselves. Like I thought if I can draw, then they can draw. Like in other words, if they just spent the time drawing, lots of time like I did, then they would be able to draw realistically. And in hindsight, I think it's interesting to me and it informs who I became later that I chose to believe that if they didn't think they were an artist, then I obviously wasn't an artist. And that drawing was not, it wasn't enough of a reason to make that distinction. And I think also in hindsight, again, I think I just wanted to fit in. So when they were saying, oh, you're different than me, I was like, no, I'm the same. And the other reason, I lived in a really small town, like 500 people small. And so this is pre-internet, right? So the only thing I'd ever heard of about artists, famous artists, was that they were poor or unhappy or
Or
down
stoned.
crazy or stuff, right?
Right? Like there's a whole thing where they were like really whack, right? I remember feeling that way about why society portrayed them that way at that time. I don't know.
Well, it's funny that you asked that question. I didn't ask that question. I just thought, okay, if that's who they are, I'm not interested in any of that. Like
Right.
like not at all. So, how did I explain the fact that I was really skilled at drawing? Like what kind of category did I put that in? And I don't know. I don't know, but I can tell you that it wasn't because I thought I was creative. The sociologist Martha Beck, she actually says that anxiety kills creativity. And, that makes so much sense to me because looking back, I was actually a really anxious kid in some ways. I mean, I didn't draw because I was expressing myself. I was drawing because I was trying to gain control over a childhood that in some ways was really chaotic.
Right. Trying to calm something.
I was trying to calm something down. And I mean, it was a really beautiful childhood. Like, really, I lived, like I said, in that small town. So it was surrounded by all this open space. It was a national forest, still is. And it snowed there. And from Southern California, that's kind of unusual. So I lived in a place where it snowed and I had horses and we had chickens and it was awesome. But mixed in with that, there was addiction, there was significant illness, and there was death. So I had this there was this level of insecurity, and this was all at a time in the 80s, Colleen, when, talking about this stuff and talking it through and processing it, that
Oh,
really
yeah.
wasn't an option. Like we didn't see the value of that. So, so I would I coped by sitting in my room and I would just draw.
Isn't that something, Bree? Because so many of us spent so much time in our rooms and unconnected from the world. And I kind of had a rule with my kids that we just didn't do that. We used
Really?
to sleep in. And
Yeah, see, I
don't
think
put
that,
emotions out publicly. Even if somebody was embarrassed or sad or got in trouble or something, they could go to the room for a few seconds and then they were expected to be back in the main living area with everybody. And it's just, we carry on, but
gosh, we didn't even eat together. Like
oh,
we didn't do hardly anything together. And that, like I said, there were a variety of reasons for that. But yeah, so I remember my mom, she said, you can do anything you want to your room. We'll make them special. And so I picked a forest green carpet and I painted the ceiling of forest green and I had white walls covered with Duran Duran. And yeah, that was my haven. I mean, I was outside riding and I would do a lot of things outside, but I did not spend a lot of time in the main house. It was either my room or outside. And
that was also a big thing then, was doing with our rooms as we wanted. I don't see that in society so much anymore. They have rooms that match the house.
oh,
We
that's
didn't. We had
interesting.
creative free agency in our rooms.
Okay, so maybe I have a 14-year-old son and I give him pretty much carte blanche in his room. Like it doesn't have to match. The only thing
I
that
don't,
I ask it has to be a little clean. Like it can't
right.
be
I
like
don't think you're the norm though. I
yeah.
don't think that way you are, because I have a lot of I know a lot of people are like, why? Like my daughter at one point, she was really into dance and music, and she painted her walls eggplant
Oh,
and then had me cut out of vinyl the lyrics to all her favorite songs and she put them all over the walls. But that was very, like, people were like, oh, that's in your home. I was like, they're like, what are you
yeah.
gonna do when you sell the house? I'm like, she'll paint her walls.
That's the thing. It's just paint.
Yeah, it's just paint. It's like
And
coloring
it
your hair. It's all
to
right.
this day, I still get such a thrill when I go to paint a room and the color is significantly different, or even when it's not, but really when it's significantly different. Ooh, it makes me so happy. I'm like, oh
And
my
we didn't have painted walls as a kid, did you? I mean, like, I painted a little bit of blue in my bedroom when I was growing up, but like the walls in the main home were all white.
mine, okay, so no, mine were not. And I think I mean, really, I think I don't give my mom, and it's not that I don't give her enough credit, but I take for granted how much I did not live in a childhood home with white walls. I don't think we had any white walls. She wallpapered, she painted, she she refinished furniture way before
Wow.
people refinished. So I still have pieces, probably from the 1920s that she's refinished. Some of them, one of them's from the 1800s. Like she and my dad were really crafty that way. So I remember walking in, there was one house in particular. I remember walking into their home and it was in a nice area and it was all white. And I remember just thinking, I didn't even know what to do with that. Well, yeah, I did actually. I thought, oh, is this how rich people live? They live with white walls? Then we must not be rich because we don't have white walls. So, I mean, it was just this, you're always comparing yourself with
Right.
context. So yeah, no, I didn't live with white walls at all.
That's interesting. So we also had a white room that the children
Really?
were never allowed in. It was only used for guests. And that was weird. Now, in my life, we don't have anything we don't use.
But me
Like
too.
silverware, jewelry, it doesn't matter what it is. We use it all.
Yep.
But my mom, I was thinking that maybe your parents were more creative than mine, but I don't know that that's it, because my mom is a music major. She taught marching band, and she also made quilts and matching valances and things like that.
My
So
mom did all that too.
she was creative that way. She just did not paint. She did have me, like, she bought some used furniture and said, well, you can paint this to match your room if you want. And I did. But that was
Okay.
probably about the only painting that happened at my house.
And I'm probably not going to get into it this much here. I mean, we can talk about it for sure. But one of the reasons that I'm so interested in talking about the things I'm talking about today about creative nature is because being creative, and I use that in quotes, and being artistic, they get pigeonholed into you either have to be able to sing, dance, paint, draw. Otherwise, you're not an artist, and therefore you are not creative. Hence, okay, I can't even draw a straight line, or I wish I was an artist, meaning I wish I had skill. And I think part of my confusion, and now it's not confusion because I understand it, is you can learn a skill. You don't have to, you don't, you can learn a skill. I had some talent and I put in tons of hours in part because I had a traumatic childhood. And but there are other ways to put in the hours. My point is that if you want to learn a skill, great. But if you want to be creative, there are so many more ways that you're already creative. And my whole goal, or one of my really just important goals, or my missions, is to get people to recognize first, because I think you need to recognize your own creativity, like that you have it in all your choices. And once you start to see that, then you can start to basically glean the benefits from living a creative life. And so I do think it gets pigeonholed, and I bristle against that now. When somebody says, "Oh gosh, I wish I was an artist," I'm like, "You are an artist." And they're like, "Oh, I wish I could draw." What? Put the time in and you'll be able to draw. I mean, it sounds snippy, maybe, or glib, but the fact is, I want to de-link those two things because they're not the same at all.
Well, and when you were going through the list of creative things, in my mind, the list didn't stop. Like I added on to that storytelling,
Sure.
finding workarounds. I mean, there's so many ways to be creative.
There's so many ways. And I think not only are there so many ways to be creative, it's important, I think, that people start to recognize they're already being creative. So then the distance between, oh, I wish I was creative and I am creative, it shrinks to almost nothing because you're already creative. You just need to perceive them differently. You know what you're already doing. And so this goes to what we were just saying. I just put this slide up because I do believe that being artistic is just a portion of what the creative nature that we're all born with. Like, I believe it's in our DNA that we are creative. We're just meant to be creative. But going back to Martha Beck, I do believe that anxiety kills creativity, but I also believe that shame and confusion, fear, sadness, they also kill creativity. And then I want to say, just like what we were saying, is that I believe we're all creative by nature. And I don't think we can help it. I think it's just a matter of unearthing it, because a lot of it's been under concrete, or the weight of all our fears or our insecurities or whatever else and sometimes I think most of the time it's not even conscious. So today, that's kind of what I want to talk about. Is I want to talk about ways in which we can start to break through the fear and the anxiety. And the way that I'm specifically speaking about that today is through getting to know yourself. Like, I have gotten to know myself, and I don't know which came first. I don't know if I wanted to get to know myself and then these habits came and I started to employ these habits, or if I started to employ these habits and then I got to know myself. I'm not sure which. I think they go back and forth. So at this point, I have probably, well, actually, I'll tell you that in a minute. But I think here's what I want to say is that I went from this little girl who did not want to call herself an artist. Like, I went to great lengths. People are like, "Are you going to be an artist when you go to school?" I have a degree in political science. Like, I did not do art at all. And so I didn't want to be called an artist. And then when I was, let's see, from the time I was 22 and I got a job painting to probably maybe in my mid 30s, I didn't call myself an artist. I called myself a painter. And when people would say to me, "Oh, so you're an artist?" I'm like, no, 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 I'm a painter. I just do what people ask me to do. I'm not being creative about it. I mean, really, it was probably maybe not mid 30s, maybe early 30s, but still, it was a long time of me saying I would actively say, "Nope, I'm a painter." Now, I am not only do I call myself a painter, I think of myself as a fully fledged woman who I will call myself an artist at the drop of a hat. I also call myself a painter, but I also embrace how creative I am and my creative nature in every area of my life. Like, even the ones that would seem like from the time I get up in the morning to the time I go to bed at night, they're choices that I make and they're creative choices. And I lean on my creative nature so much for the quality of my life now. And so I will say that, like I said, I don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg, but getting to know myself, it still is one of the most important things I do. And again, I use these habits, and these habits to me, I have about 20 now, and I have knotted them together over the years that they create a form of net that supports me. Because one of the things about having a creative nature, and I'm friends with my creative nature, it will run at a cliff and it'll be like, woohoo, we're going. And it just assumes that it'll get caught. It doesn't assume it's going to get hurt. It just wants to do what it wants to do. And that is, I love that. And I also, it's scary and it's super exciting and it keeps life interesting. And at the same time, it's super nerve wracking. Like, I'm like, no, we can't do that. We can do that. Who cares? And I'm like, no, we can't do that. I'm like, so me and my creative nature, we have a conversation. And so I've put this net in place so that when my creative nature does its thing, I can respond and know that I'm safe and I can let that nature do what it wants to do and still support myself, like the mere mortal that I am, like who's afraid and who gets insecure and all of these things. And so, because I have to say, and this is how I view myself, because I love my life. I love it. And I wouldn't trade. I mean, I've had my share of struggles. I wouldn't trade it. And the comfort that I feel in my own skin as a result of really, really leaning into these habits, I wouldn't trade it for anything. And so for today, that's kind of, I mean, not kind of, that's what I want to do. I want to talk to you guys about some of these habits that I do. And maybe you'll be inspired, or maybe you'll want to try a couple of them out for yourself. And yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So I think, yeah, because and let me just reiterate this. I think that these habits can not only reduce your anxiety, but it can clear your head so that you can start to really feel for and recognize and then embrace your own creative nature and whatever that looks like for you.
Good.
All right.
Good.
So yeah, do you have any questions so far?
I don't.
Okay. So I'm gonna share 5 of them today. And like I said, I have about 20, but these 5 hopefully will get you started. So the first one is, I tell myself this probably still, I don't know, 50 times a week. And this is the thing that I want you to know. I believe that all of my thoughts and my feelings for that matter, they're real and they're valid. I always give legitimacy to every thought I have, because here's the thing. I found that if I don't do that, I will spend a lot of time fighting with myself and, that was wrong and you shouldn't have thought that, blah, blah, blah. And the problem is that it wastes time. I have found that it's much calmer on my nervous system, and I can move forward if instead of fighting with myself, I say, wow, that was a thought. Okay, whew, all right. And then I get curious. I go, okay, I'm not going to act on that thought. Like, right. I don't act on most of my feelings either, but by validating them, it calms it down. They're like teenagers or little kids. They just want to see if they can get you, or they just say it because they want to say it. And I found that my next step is that I have a checklist. Like the minute I feel snagged by a feeling or an emotion, I have a checklist of things that I do that gets triggered by that so that I can walk through this process to kind of de-stress myself. So my checklist is very first thing is that I think about Byron Katie, and she has this quote that, is it true? And is it really true? And what I mean by that is, I think, and I don't know what she would say about it, but this is what I take from it, is that I say, is it true? I'm like, well, yeah, it's true because I thought it. And I'm like, is it really true? And it's like, might not be really true. I mean, I'm not sure. And here's the thing. At this point in my life, if I have to ask myself if a thought is true, it's probably not true. Or if it is true, like there's occasions, if it is true, what can I do about it? And then I start to think, well, let's see, can I do about it? What can I do about it? And then I have to tack on this other critical little piece, which is what can I do about it right now? And why I do that is because sometimes I will wake up at 2 a.m. on a Sunday and I will be stressing about something that I can't do anything about right then, right? I can make a list, and I've gotten up in the middle of the night and I've made a list about the things I'm going to do to, minimize the stress or to deal with whatever's stressing me out, if it is in fact true. Um, and then, okay, so for extreme examples, and this is going to sound silly, but what I do when I really can't get out of the stressful thought is that I will tell myself that, okay, you can think about this again in an hour, but until that hour, I want you to just let it go for an hour. There's nothing you can do about it right now. Just let it go. And then sometimes I don't trust myself to get back to it. What if you get distracted? And you guys, I'm not kidding. I will set an alarm for an hour and I'll be like, you can go back to stressing about it in an hour. And so I set my alarm and like literally on my phone, and I will do something else for an hour. And let me tell you the hack that's in that. Let me tell you why that's so critical is because once you give yourself permission to put something away, but you give yourself the security of knowing that you'll go back to it so it calms down the anxious brain, then most often I will think of at least one of my other habits, or I will do something that by the time I come back to it, I have a different perspective. I might not have any more answers than I did before I started the alarm, or the timer, but I will have a different perspective. So that's number one. Two is to move. And when I say move, I mean, if only a little and if only briefly, and even if it's from the comfort of your chair. And I know, we all know, if you want to get in shape, you've got to work out. There's consistency. There's, a certain amount of time, duration, intensity. I'm not talking about any of that. What I'm saying is when you are snagged by a thought or a feeling and you're feeling really anxious, sometimes the tiniest movements can make the biggest difference, or at least it's a start to make a difference. So when I'm talking about movement, I'm talking about sometimes I will sit in my chair, not this chair. I love this chair. I actually have like a comfy couch. And I will stretch my hands. I will stretch my forearms. I will move my neck. Like it doesn't have to be big movements. And for me, sometimes why I'm feeling anxious is say I have an issue with one of my knees. I'm not going to go stretch that knee. I'm not going to go jogging. I'm not going to do anything that upsets that knee. And so sometimes what I do, well, if I'm not going to do that, then I'm not going to do anything. And I think those extremes, this is true for any kind of creative endeavor. Like if you don't want to do the extreme, figure out what you do want to do and, make it in smaller bites. So if I have no energy, I just stretch I stretch my neck. If I have a little more energy, usually, and I think this is all over the internet, the girl wash your face, but it's true. Like wash your face, like just wash your face or take a shower even. And it's not about putting on makeup afterwards, unless you feel like it. It's just about changing the senses that your body is experiencing. And that tends to move you out of your head and the anxiety in your head. It's just about, like, that's why I say rub lotion, because it's just a physical sensation. And to that end, if you have even more oomph, like take a walk. And you can take a walk down the same street, or for me, sometimes I find I will even go in reverse around the block. And that gives me a whole new viewpoint. It's weird, but it does. Or sometimes I'll walk at a different time. I've actually walked at 2 a.m. around my neighborhood. Or sometimes like, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go take that trail, which I have not done at 2 a.m., but I will take a trail and I will do something different. It's just, again, to get yourself out of your head. So the third habit that I use kind of a lot actually is to do one thing. This is another way to clear my head. Like I can get really overwhelmed. I have a busy life. Like I have a lot of responsibilities and I have a lot of things that I do on a daily basis. And while I can juggle them pretty well, there are times when, say, one more thing will come in or two more things, and I'll just get overwhelmed. So I'll make my lists. I'm a like compulsive list maker. I make my lists. I try to do what I can. And sometimes none of that works. Sometimes my brain's still too full. So what I'll do is I will choose one thing. And usually this thing is something I want to do, not something I need to do. That for me is crucial because I can do what I need to do all day long and be exhausted at the end. I still have stuff to do. But if I take the time, and it's usually something really small, to do this one thing that I want to do, and here's one of the things that's the secret for me about this type of thing is that it's not only small, but it is something that probably nobody else will appreciate or even understand why you care. And this is such a great way to get to know yourself because if you do something for you for the sheer joy of it, like for the sheer just because it'll reduce your anxiety, then you'll start to trust yourself and you'll start to believe more in yourself and you'll start to realize what it is that you really want. Like people say, oh, you should clean your room, but it's like really what I want to do is I want to rearrange my sock drawer. Like I don't want to clean my room. I don't care about my room right now. I care about my sock drawer or my jewelry drawer. Like those are real examples, people. Just saying. So so let me think if I have.
So that's interesting because for me, I like when I'm feeling anxious or like I'm just not accomplishing what I've set out to accomplish. And that can be so frustrating, especially when building a business. And I will just go sit on my porch. I have a screened in porch with hammock swings. And that is just like my happy place. Sometimes I will take paper and write. Sometimes I will just sit and listen to the birds. But
Okay,
just
that's
having a place.
amazing. Yep, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like, and some people might, I think that, the comparison is the thief of joy quote is that when you start to think, well, I can't really do that because it's not productive. As I get older, I realize I'm less burdened by that belief. Like I'm like, look, if I don't want to do it, I'm not doing it.
That's an age thing, Bree.
It
I
is an
think
age
that that
thing.
came with our generation that we
Yep.
have to be productive all the time.
And our worth was tied to our productivity. Like if I wasn't
Absolutely,
being
because idle
productive,
hands are the devil's workshop, right?
that's it.
And so I can't tell you how many times I heard that, like it's tattooed on my ass, but
That
should be. But I literally like I want to say that I'm unproductive. I am my most unproductive productively when I'm on my porch. And I get the most accomplished personally for me that can't be seen by the world, can't be felt by the world, makes no difference to anybody else except that I'm a nicer person because I've done that 15 minutes, whatever it is on my porch.
it's okay. And I love that you brought up the 15 minutes because I think there's also this. I hear a lot of people say, oh my gosh, I'm so overworked. I need a vacation. And it's like, you probably do because a vacation definitely will or can recharge you in a way that a 15-minute porch sit might not. Having said that, you string enough porch sits together on a daily basis and your anxiety level at base will start to be reduced. I firmly believe that.
Right. I do too. I believe it just balances out whatever your thing is like that, but it just balances out your brain. And I used to go out there and get lost in the daydream or lost in writing or whatever it was, right? And so I do set a timer now. And I hate timers. They used to make me anxious, but they don't in that instance.
That's interesting because it's liberating to set a timer for me because then I don't have to be in control of when it stops, but I know it will. Kind of going back to setting a timer for the stress, like it's like great. Now I don't have to worry about when am I going to start thinking? When am I going to start thinking? When am I going to get back to work? It's like I don't know. I'll get back to work when the timer goes.
See, and
And
my timer's always been you have to be done by the time the timer's done. You have to be
oh,
done by the time the timer's done. You have to be done by then. And that was something I was raised with, like we did 10-minute pickups and the whole house had to be picked up in 10 minutes, things, and this stresses me out that way. So for me to set a timer out there and then I just almost give it to God, if you will, and just forget about the timer. And then when it goes off, I'm like, oh, I'm done. I'm in
oh,
my
that's
place now.
interesting. Isn't it funny how what we had as a child or children, and then now it's like, oh, yeah, no, that actually works for me now.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
think it's a difference in perspective of I really like people I hear people talk about adulting and I don't tend to use that because I actually like that I have responsibilities. I like that I have agency over my life. I really like that and I feel like I have a fair amount of agency. And having said that, there's times when I don't want to be responsible for the minutia. Like I'm going to set a timer. It's liberating instead of feeling like it's boxing me in. It's like, no, 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 I'm setting the timer and I set it for how long I want. And then I'll be done when then I'm committing to moving on to something else when it's done. Like,
Well, and it took me, I went through when I was teaching in high school, I took or teaching at the high school, I took a brain study class, and it's amazing how absolutely necessary for your brain development downtime is.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
have to have downtime for
100%.
your brain to develop, especially if you're a teenager or a young
Yep.
adult. You have to have that, or your brain doesn't get to develop correctly.
That is,
That's
there
probably my problem.
Okay, so let me tell you a piece of neuroscience that I think of a lot, which is we don't have a vascular system in our brain. We don't have, it's not a vascular system. We don't have, what is it called? It's basically the lymphatic system. We don't have one in our head. And but toxins will build up during the day, and the way that the toxins get the way that they drain out of your head is when you're sleeping, and you have to sleep for a certain amount of hours. When you're sleeping, your brain shrinks slightly, and that all that lymphatic stuff, it basically goes between your skull and your brain, and it leaks down, gravity fed, down into your lymphatic, like down into the throat, and or down into the side of the neck. So my point is, if you don't sleep, your brain doesn't shrink a little bit, and so you can't drain it. So it's
Does it
all of
matter
that.
what kind of sleep?
What?
Does it matter what kind of sleep? Like, I'm the busiest person in my sleep. I price things, I place orders, I do math all night. My husband never has a dream or anything, and I'm like the most active at night.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good question to which I don't know the answer. I think it's more that I think you do need to be in kind of a deep sleep in order for your brain to relax enough. So I don't know if the amount of REM you have maybe make a difference. I'm not sure actually. Um, wow, I'm not sure. Uh, and I'm looking at the time, and so I had a couple more stories. Would you like to see them?
Sure.
All right.
Yes.
So I will say, and I'll go through this quickly, but this right here, I want to give an example of something that bugged me for weeks until I finally did something about it. And that is, this is a picture, it's an actual picture of my car. And I was recently gifted 5 carloads like this of art supplies from a woman who was moving. She was in her 80s, and she was moving from Southern California to somewhere on the East Coast with her family. So she gave me, and I didn't even take all of it, but she gave me what turned out to be this 5 carloads. So I brought them into the studio, and I systematically, took what I wanted, and then I gave some away. And she had all these beautiful bins. Like I just love bins. I'm obsessed. And so she had written labels on all of the bins over the years. And her handwriting, of course, she's in her 80s, so it was beautiful and it was perfect. And she had just taped it up with what she had. And some of it was Post-it, some of it was duct tape. And that was fine. Like it was whatever until I got it into my space. And then the visual chaos of all those different types of labels. Now I have a working studio. Okay, people, it's organized, but it's colorful, and it's got a lot of stuff. But for me, seeing her writing on yellow Post-its, it was visually, it just was too chaotic for me. So one afternoon I said, I don't know what else I have to do, but it doesn't matter because I need to systematically pull every label off and then go with my labeler, my favorite labeler, and put my labels on. And I did that. And I have to tell you, here's what it looked like. And I was so happy that I stayed up late that night doing everything I was supposed to be doing in the afternoon, but I didn't care. And that's what I'm talking about. Like I had the energy and the motivation to do all the things I need to do because I took a break to do something I wanted to do. And that's the point. So this isn't the last one, but it's definitely the most involved one that I'm going to talk about today, and that's play. And I could do a whole presentation on play. I love this concept so much. And the thing that I want to say about play first, I guess is how I want to say it, is that play, like creativity, or being artistic or being creative, seems to get pigeonholed in the same narrow set. You either play a sport, you draw, you play games. If you're an adult or a kid, it usually is limited to kids, or at least it's, oh, you play as a kid, you don't play as an adult. And if you do, you play sports. And I'm here to tell you that playing sports, just because you play a sport doesn't mean you're engaged in play, because play
Right.
has very specific criteria that makes it play. And the benefits from play come as a result of satisfying those criteria. So the first thing I want to say is that Play is not the same for everybody. What's play for me, which is say doing my lizard enclosures or my reptile enclosures, would not be play for someone else. Just as sports, I mean, I'm active, but I would never consider a sport play. I don't even think games are play. So really important if you, when you get to know yourself, you will start to see what's play for you. And hopefully what I'm about to tell you will help clarify what's play. So the first thing is that you lose track of time. And I don't know how many of you have heard that before. I will say when I hear that lose track of time, that does not sound fun for me. I'm like, oh, if that's play, I don't want to do play. And the reason why is because I think of losing track of time, I equate that with drug use. I equate that with some kind of escape. Like I've never done drugs, but one of the reasons is because I don't want to lose track of anything, like time, my brain, my thoughts, nothing, right? I'm like, I don't want to do that. But here, let me tell you through experience and through study that when people say, or when you hear lose track of time with regard to play, what it means is that you lose track of time because you're so focused on what you're doing. And the attention is so great. And at the end of it, you feel refreshed and you feel like you've had a break. And it is the best feeling in the world, like the best feeling. So that's losing track of time. Like it's not about losing your mind. It's about just focused on something else. Another thing is we become less self-conscious. And I will say that sounds great, but this one particularly, at least it did for me, it took a little getting used to. Like when I started doing play things, I was actually really self-conscious, especially because I was doing stuff that was weird. Like I didn't think of the lizard enclosures or my little reptile stuff as play for probably 4 years. I just thought, oh, you know what I'm doing? You know, I'm being responsible and I'm helping them out and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, this is play for me, man. It's so fun. So I think that, you know, getting into a group where other people are doing the same weird, fun thing that you are helps out when you're first starting out. Or you just kind of trial and error it, see if you really enjoy it. You'll feel it in your gut if it's play. Another thing that play is it's not results driven. And what I mean by that is this can get tangled up with, I enjoy what I do. It's like, it's not the same thing as play. Like pure play is you might enjoy the result when it's done, but that's not why you do it. And here's an example. I make a living painting paintings for people. This is one of my own paintings, but I literally, designers and homeowners come to me and they ask me for something. And I love what I do. I enjoy it. It's not, most of it isn't play. So what is play, for example, say 95% of doing a commissioned painting is fun for me. Like I get to learn about it. I get to, you know, I'm researching it. I'm blah, 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 different materials, whatever. The play, though, is a very small part of that. And like, for example, like I said, I work on large pieces. So usually the first layer of a painting, it's a huge white canvas. Oh my God, I have so much fun. I will put up colors. I will, you know, mix stuff. I will throw things at it. It doesn't matter because I know it's going to get covered up. So I can play and kind of get into it. So, but that little bit of play, like the tiniest little bit of play, the benefits from that, just tiny bouts of play, are enormous. Like it has reshaped the quality of my life by adding play into my life. So in order to help you guys, I want to tell you about Stuart Brown. Stuart Brown wrote the book called Play. Oh, I didn't talk about Don't Wanting to End. Let me tell you that because it's important. You don't want it to end until you do. I think a lot of times you go, oh, I wish I could play all the time. Actually, nothing lasts forever. Even play, it gets boring or it gets done. Like you go through an arc, you go through a cycle and you get done. My 5 minutes of play, it's enough sometimes. Think of a dog at the park. Like dogs play for a little while and then they're done. And then they go play with somebody else or they take a rest or they take a sniff. Whatever they do, it's not constant play. Constant play is not the goal. So now on to Stuart Brown. He wrote a book called Play. He's also the founder of the National Institute for Play based in Central California, and he's amazing. So he came up with 8 play personalities. And so I just want to run quickly through them to see if you can recognize yourself in any of them. And maybe it'll help you, again, recognize what your own style of play is. So the first one is the collector. So this is somebody that collects things, or it could be somebody who collects experiences, like seeing a band around the country or watching all the Academy nominated movies in one category. This one is the competitor. So these people consider it play when they're competing. They like to win, they like to keep score, and they like to play by the rules. And the thing to know about this play personality is that it can be a team sport, or it can be a solo sport, or it can be your personal best. Like you can be in competition with yourself. It doesn't have to be against others. And the winning is not that they like to win, but they like to play to win. It's not that if they don't win, they don't stop playing. Like they don't think I'm never going to play that sport again, because they like the process. They like the play. So the next one's the creator. And this one is just someone who takes joy in making things. And the making things could be something physical like a sweater or a painting, or something that we associate music, a piece of music. But it could also be things like coding. It could be things like writing, although that's another play personality. But it could be a lot of making food. It could be, making cupcakes, or it could just making things, restoring old things. That's part of making things. So the next one is the director. So this personality loves to plan. They love to organize. I actually really like to plan parties. I love getting into the minutia of it. Some people don't. I do. So they like to plan. This is the explorer. And the thing about the explorer is, yes, it could be physical, it could be travel, going places, but it could also be an internal exploration about feelings, or about looking at another point of view, doing research on a new topic, learning something new, taking a class. That would also be considered like exploring. I will watch hours of YouTube videos that are about one subject. I will just see what all these people have to say about this one subject. That's super, I love that. So of course there's a joker, and this is the oldest and most extreme player kind of throughout history. And I don't know if it needs much explanation, but it's basically foolishness or just making people laugh. They find pleasure in that. So this one is the kinesthete, and this is the person that finds joy in moving their body. And it could be dancing, or it could just be, something extreme like that, or it just could be moving a part of your body, or they tap their feet, or they just kind of, I dance in my car sometimes, I just do a little jig because I don't want to sit still. And finally, there's the storyteller. And the storyteller, this is a person who the joy comes from the imagination. Like that's the key part of being a storyteller. Here's the thing I want to say about this. It's not just play for the storyteller. It's also play for the person who watches the movie or the play or the musical. Like the person who's watching someone else's creation is also engaged in play. That's the type of storytelling play. So those are the 8 personalities, and all of us are a combination of play personalities. We're not just one. So you can, I can say, I love to plan for a trip. And so I'll plan for a trip and then I'll go, and that satisfies the explorer. So you can see how it can be more than one. We're all a combo. And finally, because I love this organization so much, if you're interested in more talk about play or more information about play, this National Institute for Play, it's an amazing website. So the last habit that I want to tell you about is just to say yes. Like say yes to everything that isn't a hard no. And if it is a hard no, check with yourself and see if it's your fear talking. Because I can tell you, I would not have the life that I have right now if I didn't say yes to Roger for a job that I thought I was completely unqualified for. And by the way, I didn't need that job. I took his job. It was a $3 hour cut in pay. Like I didn't need it. It wasn't more money for me. There was nothing except it just sounded fun. So I did it, and it changed the course of my life. Yeah. I can give you more examples, but I think we're running out of time. Anyway, if you'd like to get a hold of me, I'm writing a newsletter. I'm Bree@heartfeltplay.com. If you'd like to sign up for the newsletter, you can just reach out at Heartfelt Play. And there's at the bottom, you can just sign up and I'll have your email and I can send you a newsletter and what else might be happening. Yeah. So Colleen, that's what I have.
appreciate that, Reed. That was so fun. And you did so good.
Thank you. Oh my God, I had so much fun.
You did so good. So I will drop your
Oh, that's weird.
email.
It didn't show up.
I see
Did
that.
it show up when I?
That
Oh, that's.
it's not that
I
one.
had a little. I had a little QR code all set up.
Oh, well, darn it.
Well, that's
Um,
rude.
maybe you can add it as a picture in the comment.
I will do that. Yep.
Okay. And then I will go ahead and add your web address and your email address in a comment also.
Perfect.
All righty.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to end this recording right now.